play.
Welcome to the First Focal Plane Podcast with Sean and Rooster.
Howdy. What's going on, guys?
I love that we got your play-by-play audibly when you were doing the and play.
Yes. Well, if I don't say it, my brain takes like 5 seconds for my hands to tell me to do something. So that's what I have to do. I have to verbalize everything. But anyway, welcome to the First Focal Plane Podcast. And see, this is why Kurt does the intro. Welcome to the First Focal Plane Podcast, episode 36. We have a group of very special guests tonight, guys. We have MPs Warren Steinley of Regina Louvain and MP Shannon Stubbs of Lakeland Two Hills. So no big deal. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Big deal.
We are proudly brought to you, as always, by EM Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta, Canada. They are Canada's premier precision builder of lightweight hunting rifles, starter packages, and King of 2 Mile competitors. Kurt Rouse, Twisted Rooster. EM Precision has the right stuff to get you up and running with surgical precision. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and their website at emprifles.ca.
Excellent. Tonight's Top Shot is brought to you by Bolt Action Coffee, bringing you exclusive award-winning specialty coffees to the precision shooting community. Boasting specialty coffee cupping scores of 85.5 or higher, Bolt Action Coffee roasts will get your morning started right and keep you on target all day long. Choose between Scopes Up, Overwatch, and Suppressed. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and their website at boltactioncoffee.com. Use code FIRSTFOCALPLANE, all one word, all caps, at checkout for 10% off your order.
Well, that's not all, guys. Our Squad Leaders segment is brought to you by Callsign 66. Callsign 66 is a veterans-based organization founded to facilitate multi-generational passage of information, ballistic applications, R&D, and shooter development. Within Callsign 66, the passage of information is omnidirectional. Our organizational philosophy is such that we all have something to offer, and there is always room for improvement. We as a community are our own best asset for learning. Welcome to the Brotherhood. Damn, that was almost perfect. Find them on their website. Find them on the internet. They're on Facebook and Instagram, and their website is callsign66.ca.
Oh, somebody just let the air out of your tires, buddy. Aw.
Happens to everyone.
It was almost perfect.
It was good, buddy.
Wow. I screwed up in front of the MPs.
Well, I'm pretty sure they've seen some bumblings larger than what you've just put out.
They deal with the right people every week, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
Then I'm saying that, not them.
I'm sure we've also done it ourselves many times.
Yeah.
I might do it tonight.
Good grief, that's so true also for me.
No pressure.
Well, speaking of pressure, I'm going to put her on the spot.
Let's do it.
Miss Shannon Stubbs, who are you?
Well, I've been elected since 2015, and I represent a big rural riding in Northeast Alberta. So yeah, I'm on my farm right now in my kitchen, just west of Two Hills, Alberta. And if you've ever been kind of in any area sort of between Bruderheim and the Saskatchewan border, Lloydminster, there's a good chance you're in Lakeland, unless you're up in Fort McMurray area, which is just north. So that's where I represent and where I'm from. I was raised in this riding and just about an hour in another direction, but also still within the riding, and really proud to represent Lakeland, where I live here with my husband, just west of Two Hills, where we have horses, and Warren Steinley has helped us come up with some promotional slogans and things like that to help market our horses, which naturally I want to keep, but my husband wants to sell.
Your riding is a nice area, even though it isn't Saskatchewan.
Yes, thank you. It's a beautiful
It
area.
is.
It's kind of the
I
next
agree.
best thing to Saskatchewan, right?
Next best. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Now we're going to get into the Alberta Saskatchewan
Oh,
No, we're not.
No,
Stay
we're making
focused.
it
already. Right off.
contentious
Let's
right
do
off
that
the
as
bat.
another topic on its own someday. Yeah.
Stay focused.
Yeah, it's
bet.
mainly farming communities and oil and gas and rural communities. I am proud to represent half of the city of Lloydminster. As you probably know, our friend and colleague Rosemary Falk is on the Saskatchewan side there, but so Lloydminster really would be the biggest population. Oh my goodness, look at this. I didn't know I could see these comments. How nice is that? But also, I'm afraid as this goes forward. But Lloydminster is the biggest populated area in Lakeland, and then the next largest town would be probably around like 6,300, and then it just gets smaller from there, including the one I grew up near and live near right now with my husband.
Cool.
So just before we move on, just for our audio listeners, what Shannon was talking about there is we had a comment from Shane who says, OMG, Shannon Stubbs, you're my hero, even though you're not my MP. Thanks for everything that you do. That was what Shannon was talking about, the comments. And she looks rather embarrassed right now, but very happy.
Well, that's
Okay,
got to feel
thanks,
good,
Chris.
though.
So everybody else couldn't see that? Well,
No, we all.
Now all the audio listeners
Yeah.
know
That's
as
great,
well.
yeah.
right, got
It's very
it.
important.
Got
This
it.
is a podcast after all, so it does go on your phone eventually. Anyway, so moving on, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Warren Steinley.
Thanks a lot, Sean, and thanks everyone for having us on. I'm Warren Steinley. I'm the MP for Regina Louvain.
My MP.
Born-
Yep.
Best riding in the country. I was born and raised in southwest Saskatchewan.
Warren.
So, born and raised on a dairy and beef farm. So, I always call myself a bit of a hybrid. I'm a rural guy that represents a whole only urban seat in Regina, but I say everyone in Saskatchewan is one generation removed from the farm, so we connect very well with our riding, and looking forward to being on the podcast. I am now also the Shadow Minister for Internal Trade and Economic Development, and I'm happy to be here with my best friend Shannon Stubbs, who is the Shadow Minister for Public Safety. I'm foreshadowing,
Yes.
potentially a minister, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation. And Shannon, thanks for joining the guys. I'm happy and looking forward to having a great conversation.
Hey, thanks, Warren. I forgot about the whole title part. So yeah, I'm
You're a
just
big deal.
really that's so ridiculous. I'm just really happy to be here too. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. Well, the reason. Okay, so moving on. So the reason I reached out to you guys to come on the show is there isn't a lot of confusion, but there's a lot of angst or anxiety in the firearm community about what exactly is going to happen now that the Liberals just announced Bill C-21 and Bill C-71 a few years past with Ralph Goodale. So can you guys talk about, what are you guys doing as especially you, Shannon, as with your file, being the official opposition? What's your platform or take on this? And if elected, what are you guys going to do?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. First of all, for law-abiding firearms owners and family members of law-abiding firearms owners and relatives and friends, they're right to be concerned. They're right to be deeply concerned with what will be the impact of C-71, which really is the culmination of a variety of all of these different different pieces of legislation and policies that are constantly and always against already law-abiding legal firearms owners. And so I just want to affirm it's right that you're hearing from people that are concerned about it, and they should get involved and take action, and get politically involved if they never have been before, if they hate politics or they hate politicians. I mean, like, frankly, so do I, which might sound weird. So maybe they've never, maybe they've never gotten involved before, but they ought to on this. So I'm probably going to say things that people already all know, but there are a number of really concerning measures here in C-71 that should concern law-abiding firearms owners, but also every single Canadian. And so to be clear, our party will, as we've already stated, and will on this debate, will repeal C-71. We will repeal the May 2020 OIC. that automatically turned turned law-abiding firearms owners into criminals without debate, without input, and in fact, of course, as you guys all know, have continued to capture more law-abiding firearm owners even since May 2020, which the Liberals seem to be forgetting every time they talk about it.
And now
we also will
law-abiding
repeal.
airsoft owners.
Yes. Yes. And that's actually a big issue I think we should get into.
And the law-abiding Black Rifle Coffee Company owners.
Oh, geez, don't start with that.
So we will. So if we're elected, we will repeal C-71, but we need the help of every single Canadian, obviously, to replace the Liberals and to get that done.
But I thought this is what every Canadian wanted.
Well, I think that this is the thing that's, I got to tell you, is most concerning for me. This is what the Liberals and the left trade on. They trade on people's rightful concerns about law and order, about people's rightful concerns about cracking down on criminals. They're preying on people, like in Toronto, for example, there were 500 shootings in a year, right? So the Liberals and the left are trading on, I think, as every single one of us would be if we were residents there, the concerns of everyday family members and citizens and people who are in that community. And the Liberals are trying to say this legislation is going to make Canadians more safe. And I think they're trying to get away with the impression that they're taking action against criminals and against the illegal use of what is usually often illegal smuggled and imported firearms. And they're not actually taking action on any of that in C-71.
Shannon, I'm jumping in. Let me in.
Targeting law-abiding firearms owners.
Let me in, Shannon.
Sorry, Warren.
No, I was just going to say...
This is the problem.
We'll have a great conversation, but the Liberals and the left trade on this, but our colleague Bob Stroya brought in a private member's bill that would have tougher sentences for gun smuggling criminals, smuggle guns across the border, and it was a private member's bill. There was nothing to do, it was nonpartisan. It was, we want tougher penalties for people that commit crimes with guns, gun smugglers, and we know that most of the crimes committed in Canada are with illegal firearms smuggled across the border. Every Liberal, every NDP voted against that bill. So when they try and trade on that fear of,
that's right,
logical fear of crimes committed by guns, which are done by illegal firearms, yet their words don't match their actions, and they all voted against that. So they talk a good game, but when it comes down to actually bringing in tougher penalties for the people who are committing crimes, they failed Canadians again.
And
blows
Warren,
my mind, that shit.
It is mind-boggling, and Warren, on that very point too, that's right. So literally the week before, and maybe you guys know this, but literally the week before they brought in C-21, they defeated Bob's bill. And literally the day after C-21, they brought in C-22, which actually explicitly reduces sentences and penalties for crimes and crimes committed with firearms, but also, just so you know, a whole host of other crimes and offenses. So it is a complete sham for the Liberal and left to argue
let me ask you about that
C-21
one.
is about public safety.
So there, if I remember correctly, and I could be completely out to lunch here, you guys please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, they were saying that they were voting against that legislation because it wouldn't pass constitutional muster, and that there would be charter challenges, and the bill wouldn't work as law anyways. But then at the same time, how many things over the last year, let alone the last 6 years now, they're literally in a huge lawsuit with the CCFR, which is a charter challenge. Maybe I'll just leave that open for you guys to maybe comment on that.
So Chris, that's very hard to actually be true, because when you do a private member's bill, the process is it gets researched by the Library of Canada, nonpartisan. The Justice Department and clerks look at it to make sure that it will hold water. And a bill that wouldn't hold water would never get to the vote part of the process of a private member's bill. So there are independent parties that look at these bills to make sure that they are following the rule of the law. So whoever is putting that argument forward is just for political reasons. let's get it. The facts of the matter are the NDP and Liberals voted against it because of partisan reasons, because they didn't want to support a conservative bill.
Well, and talking points about banning scary black guns when really the majority of guns, Warren, you can attest to this. How many guns are seized by Regina City Police that are sawed-off single-action Cooey 22 rifles or 1022s, that were illegally obtained? And you see on the Regina City Police Facebook feed every day, X person was arrested.
Duct tape, single round bolt action from 1964.
Yep, and that's been cut down to be concealable, so that they can use it in their gang activities or their illicit activities. And it's not guys like us.
No, it's
Exactly.
all illegally
It's not
modified.
guys like you.
All people that lots are stolen, right? Let's be simple and plain. Stolen, illegally modified, so that they can conceal them and commit crimes with them. And I have friends in our RPS that deal with that every day, and they say that what basically the legislations that are being brought forward now are going to be nothing to keep our hardworking men and women in the police force safer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's going to do nothing to adhere to public safety, considering, Warren, you've recently gone through the PAL procedure and PAL process. Shannon, do you have your PAL? I'm just curious.
I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I should. I grew up with firearms. Grew up in a hunting family, and go to the Vermilion Gun Club all the time with my friends out there. But I don't. And
That's okay.
I do know one of my colleagues has his pal, and I'm going to give him a shout out because he lent me this hat. Blaine Calkins from Red Deer Lacombe. Thanks for the hat, buddy. I don't even know if you know I have it, but I appreciate it.
I don't know if you know that I have
I
it.
don't know if you know I have it.
You shouldn't have blinked.
Restricted firearms and pistols are not, well, they're definitely a problem in the metro centers. Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Winnipeg, Regina to some extent, Vancouver. But they're not obtained by law-abiding firearms owners that are arguably the most vetted citizens in this country right now.
Yes.
Every day, right? They run it every day. If you have your PAL, you get ran through the system every day.
Well, you guys, also this is a thing that should also concern firearms owners. There's so many in this bill, but it is this issue around the emergency prohibition orders, right? And you guys can talk at this at length, although I'm also confident that all of your listeners already know. I mean, right now there are 4 series of options of escalating seriousness dealing with concerns around license holders. Implicit, though, in the current regime, of course, is the ability to dispute, the given notice, and some confidence that there's going to be due process and all the facts are going to be considered here.
Within reason. Yeah.
Right? No, you're right. And that in the case of a concern about public safety or an imminent threat, right now, police officers already have the ability to act efficiently in that regard. Yeah. But I think what firearms owners should be very concerned about in C-21 is this brings in a regime both regarding search and seizure and also on emergency prohibition orders, which completely makes that lopsided, removes notice, removes the principles of fairness, and really gives sweeping powers both to everyday citizens against individuals and also third parties. And I think in a way puts law enforcement also in a real pressured position, because imagine a scenario where an individual has gone to a judge, somehow gotten an emergency prohibition order, but maybe not a search and seizure, except the police officer has to deliver the emergency prohibition. Well, in the new case, you're going to be a police officer thinking, what if something happens and I don't go in? Now, right now, there's a very serious threshold and burden of proof and considerations a police officer has to take into account before they do that. But they are without a doubt creating a regime with countless opportunities for abuse, and also may once again, like usual, end up in the exact opposite outcome that they say they are. Yeah, exactly. This comment is exactly right. But
comment
result
says legalizing
in
swatting, just so
legalizing swatting.
Yeah.
Well, and it's implicitly written in that bill.
Opposite.
Sorry to cut you off, Shannon, but it's implicitly written in this proposed bill that if somebody feels threatened at all by a firearms owner, they can approach a judge and have those search and seizure happen without due process.
Without due process.
For a minimum of 30 days Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say I'm going to the range, and I live in a multi-unit dwelling, not here, but in a multi-unit condo, and I'm taking my long
Yep.
gun to the range, and I've got it cased and locked properly with 2 sets of locks, and I go, which is above and beyond the safe transportation restriction, but I digress. Moving on and loading that gun into my truck. If somebody feels threatened because they look, oh, that's a gun case, that guy has guns, I'm going to lose my guns for 30 days if this goes through.
Yep.
And they call it in, and it's, without due process. And you know what happens when you get your guns taken? You're going to have a hell of a time getting them back.
And even more likely scenario, Sean, is let's forget about if you've got a couple that has split, and one wants to get back at the other, or even worse, if me and my neighbor argued last month about who should pay for our fence, and then he sees me walking out with my range bag and my case, it's unfathomable how this legislation has completely ignored the human equation. I've been talking with this privately with friends lately. I've been saying that, like, this is like we've crossed the territory into communism now, because communism is the same way. It seems great on paper, but the problem with it is that it ignores the human equation. And when you add the human equation into it in real life, when you try to put it into practice, it just turns into an absolute shit show. And that's exactly what this would be.
That's right. And so this should be a concern for law-abiding firearms owners. Also, all of you understanding the real distinction between disputes over licenses and an emergency prohibition order, which, as you know, as firearms owners, but maybe Joe Blow doesn't out there, actually means you're prohibited from things like nail guns and t-shirt guns. Like, it's that a prohibition order is the highest level of seriousness compared to the 4 escalating scales that can happen in a review of a license right now. But Chris, to your point, those are exactly the kinds of scenarios that I fear. And let me give you an example here that was very compelling to me. So we know that the argument will be made, and this is critical and important, about efficiency in terms of response to a threat, either to another person or to a person's own self. I'm sure we all agree that there ought to be efficient measures to take action on that regard, which there are under Canadian law currently. Here's an example that was given to me by a lawyer. He knows of a woman who is a top sport shooting competitor. She obviously has firearms because of her
Sport.
job.
Yeah.
Yep. Her sport. Her ex happened to have made what was deemed to be a compelling request at that time for a search and seizure. That search and seizure went ahead, and the court check and balance, though, that exists right now ended up resulting in the facts being exposed that the ex was actually a domestic abuser, and he had succeeded through the current situation to get her firearm search and seized and removed, leaving her in that position. Now, this is an example that certainly I would say the proponents among liberals and the left they're not contemplating, right? They're just thinking, let's take action. They're trying to justify C-21 as somehow a remedy to this sort of situation. But that's the reality of the kind of thing that can happen. And it is particularly, I think, a possibility when you no longer have the judicial process and the checks and balances that exist right now. I mean, imagine what could occur.
Yeah, no doubt.
Or not even dealing with real firearms.
Bingo. Totally.
You have airsoft, you have gel blasters, you have paintball that could be deemed, or my kid's toy that has an orange cap, but it looks too real. It's just opening up a world of hurt, and not to mention the economic destruction that they have done with this prohibition to countless businesses across Canada.
Yeah.
That's one
you
thing
guys absolutely have to talk about the airsoft and paintball aspect. It's bananas.
Warren, why don't you take that?
That's one thing I was going to bring up. Not the airsoft, but the actual economic devastation of small shops, small gun owner shops, and the fact now that these businesses have basically, because of government legislation and government intervention, are going to be forced to close their doors at a time when it's hard enough right now during COVID-19 to run a business. Now, these government legislation they're putting in place for no reason other than make themselves feel better, are now causing more harm to these small businesses and ammunition companies and gun companies across the country, and they have no forethought whatsoever of putting legislation in place that continues to hurt and hamper small business owners in this sector.
Well, let's just go through the history of that for a second, and that's you're hitting something that's close to my heart now. I am a small business owner. It's why pre-show why I was logged on so late. I was working, so 2015 comes along, and in very short order, tax laws are changed, and I'm called a crook because I'm a small business owner. That's
business tax thief.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you're just trying to evade taxes.
That's exactly what I was told, or more to the point, I'm using my wife to evade taxes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that was right off the bat. And throughout COVID. Geez, I shouldn't get started on COVID. We all know how COVID has been screwing over small business owners, and but it's okay because my rent and my wage subsidies equal somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000 a month right now. So I should be okay, and I should just accept it because I'm saving the world. Doesn't matter that I've been losing $20,000 to $25,000 per month for 7 of the last 12 months. So it's kind of a pattern of I'm going on a rant because it's small business. I'm getting off topic, but
you can take Mr. Trudeau. You can take Mr. Trudeau at his word. He admires dictatorships, and he would like to see how as many people as possible live off a government program and a government check. And you go to your mailbox for your check instead of going to work for your paycheck.
And let's face it, he's out the gate and down the road with this.
Oh yeah,
it's
there's
not
a pattern.
just an idea anymore. This is the scary part.
But then he won't.
That's why we need. That's why we need to talk about it and make sure they are related. That's why we need to talk about it.
Targeting law-abiding retailers, law-abiding business owners, law-abiding Canadians, like everyday Canadians out in the world. They are constantly targeting them, constantly attacking them, while sort of pretending or saying they're actually doing something else. You know what I mean? Like,
while spending the majority of his life as a trust fund kid. I'm sure that they've
out
never.
Of my mouth, Chris.
I'm sure that throughout his life, him and his parents have never ever done everything that they could to minimize the number of taxes that they were paying. Like nobody's going to convince me of that. Sitting there with the hood of his Mercedes, telling me that I'm a crook.
Well,
I've never owned a Mercedes.
Every finance minister can forget about a villa in France. I got a pretty nice place down in Rush Lake, and sometimes it happens to everyday Canadian all the time to forget about a villa. But you're talking about people that haven't really been in the real world, haven't worked for a paycheck, haven't had to decide if they're gonna put some gas in the car or.
But that's the problem, guys.
You're gonna pay in a month.
Like a lot of the general, and let's call a spade a spade. He's pandering to his base, and his base are uneducated people who view guns as what they see on movies, and they're not looking at the 3 guns, the sport shooters, the hunters, the people who use these things on a daily basis. And friend of the show, Gil White, who's watching right now, good friend of Warren Steinley in the show.
Hey, Gil.
Good reminder from Gil.
Yeah. Gil says in 2018, hunting, fishing, trapping, and shooting sports contributed $13.2 billion to the Canadian economy. And, that's nothing to shake his stick at, especially when he's canceling pipelines. He's raising taxes on farmers with his, carbon tax that is right out to lunch. But you know what? He's pandering to his base that is uneducated, that, support him financially, and but he's going after things that are talking points that are like an AR-15. When was the last time an AR-15 was used in a crime in Canada?
Yes,
that's irrelevant.
The important part is, according to some of his MPs, who's using the AR-134 submachine guns to kill people.
Right, yeah, that plug.
That's an important distinction. But more to the topic, I think
it shows you how much they actually know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, right? I don't actually know the answer to the last time that was used, except I do know this.
That's only because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Right. So the Prime Minister,
made up.
But this is what I do know. The Prime Minister is trying to say that C-21 outlaws, in his words, the word he's made up, assault style military weapons, of course, which have been banned from public use since the 70s. He's also
you.
the same guy who said he brought in a law to make sure that you had to have a license to purchase a firearm or to buy ammo, both of which already previously existed. Like, this is the pattern. So we've got this prime minister here giving this rationale for this legislation, but I don't know why anybody would trust him. Either people who are very concerned about their personal and public safety, and law-abiding firearms owners. Like, this is the problem. He just has no credibility.
And being such a woke, virtue signaling person that he is, when he abstained from the vote yesterday, or his entire party abstained from the vote,
That
calling
was
the
insane. Can I just
Communist
say that
Party
was
of
insane?
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't aware, the Liberal Party went on record and abstained from a vote brought on by the Conservatives, the Conservative Party of Canada, to call the what's going on
the Uyghurs in
of the Uyghurs and the Muslims in China.
Genocide.
Yeah, and called announcing that a genocide, and they abstained from the vote. They wouldn't even show up.
all the cabinet ministers.
Yeah. But they're all about protecting people and public safety.
And yeah, we got
that's the thing that doesn't that just doesn't track, and it's one thing if we're ideologically opposed or if we're philosophically opposed or whatever, but when you can't even be consistent in your own ideology or your own philosophy, that's when that's legitimately when a person loses credibility. When you high horse, and again, we've got a nice long pattern of this as well. Mr. Prime Minister, why is half of your cabinet women? Well, it's 2017.
Well, you're right.
I'm going to answer in the most indignant way as I possibly can,
answer of all
and
to
say it's the
anything
21st
ever.
century. And then what does he do? In very short order, a couple of those female cabinet ministers thrown under the bus and driven over and backed over
Not
and driven
falling in
over
line.
again because it's 2018.
anyway.
Exactly.
Well, and
now
without
it's
getting
the same situation here, right? It's
Yeah.
everybody has the right. I'm all about bringing in immigrants. I'll bring in confirmed people with confirmed ties to ISIS because we love everybody and everybody has to love everybody else. But the Uyghur Muslims in China, well, yeah, they're not really in Canada, so screw them, I guess.
Right.
They don't matter.
Yeah, and most of the thing that bothers me the most about this whole conversation around what they're going to do with Bill C-21 is liberals can just admit they don't know what they don't know. That's just wise words from my father. Sometimes just admitting you don't know what you don't know. 90%, I don't know. A large percentage of the Liberal MPs probably never seen some of the firearms that we're talking about tonight.
Yep.
They don't know what
Most
they
of
are.
them.
They don't know what it looks like. They don't even know what it would look like to go to a range and shoot a gun, which I want to give a shout out to Gil and Cliff, who took me to the range there in Regina late last year, and I learned a lot about guns that day too, because I don't have as broad of a knowledge as I should also. But a liberal would never admit that they don't know any of the guns that they're talking about when they banned in the OIC. They fundamentally cannot say that they don't have the knowledge and the know-how to know what they're talking about when they're introducing Bill C-21 too. Like, if you listen to some of their speeches, it's just they get a talking point from the PMO and they just read it. And I always thought when you get up in the House of Commons, you should be able to have some background knowledge and speak on your feet without reading from a script.
And represent your constituents and be a voice for them and not just toe the party line. And and that's why, I voted for Warren and I tried to get as many people to do because he does that. Anyway, now
I love whoever that person is too.
that's Shannon.
Shannon's
Rob.
getting all the love tonight.
No, but what this person is saying is exactly what just grinds my gears at the whole gender thing. Like,
What grinds your gears, Shannon?
many things, but as you know, Warren, you're just
Just
voting
before you
now,
comment on it, let's mention what he's saying so that the audio listeners. Caber Arms
Right, I
is saying
keep
glad
forgetting the whole
Shannon didn't get her
technology
job based on her gender. She's a damn good representative for her riding and all conservatives.
Here,
Okay,
here.
Go.
Okay, so it's embarrassing for you to say that, but thank you. But that's the main thing is, like, it's so demeaning. But this is Chris, to your point about the whole pattern and the difference between words and actions. Even on this issue, this is where the liberal left trots out all these words And then what they do is exactly the opposite, as you outlined with what their actual reactions were to women who challenged the prime minister. But even the whole thing about I have half a cabinet being women because it's 2015 or whatever it was, I like that's
Couldn't
not
think
the
of a
basis
better
on which I
fucking
want a
answer than
job.
that.
And that's actually
Yeah.
demeaning and insulting
Absolutely
to
it is.
a woman who doesn't sit around thinking the first and only thing all day, like, oh, wow, I'm a woman.
Right,
But actually
right.
is focused on my job and doing my job for the people who sent me
And
here and doing
competent.
my job in public safety and doing my job on natural resources. Yeah, and try to demonstrate my capacity and competence and like maybe I can do a thing or two here.
Well, you know, the funny
It's just
thing
so
about that,
inherently insulting.
the funny thing about that is, you know, I haven't heard anybody put that any better into words than Jordan Peterson, and he says fundamentally it is the difference between believing in opportunity of, or sorry, equality of outcome
Or
Yeah.
or
equality of opportunity.
equality of opportunity,
Yeah.
and truly, you know, equality of outcome. When you actually think the process through, it is the sexist ideology.
Absolutely.
Equality of opportunity, giving everybody the same opportunity and allowing them to succeed or fail based on their merits. That truly, when you really think about it, that is what equality of the sexes is and should be. And really, I think it's a funny thing. And I'm going to say this, being I won't speak for you or Sean or Ruth. You guys tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think that of the three of us, I'm the only one who has not been a dyed-in-the-wool conservative since they turned 18. Am I right about that? You guys have always been
I would agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm the only one of the three of us who has not always been conservative. And I think that's something that is very unique to this particular Liberal government. It became a woke Liberal government, and they took that woke ideology, which quite frankly is just an absolute bullshit ideology.
There's that word again. So what? I'm not very hip. So woke. Everyone uses the word woke. So that if you guys could give a definition of woke, I'd really
New
appreciate
age leftist. Everybody has to be wrapped in a bubble. You cannot tell what anybody's race, creed, gender, religion is.
And freedom of speech has its limits.
Well, you're not allowed to say anything if it's going to potentially offend anyone. So we're just not going to have conversations.
That's right.
And
So Sean, you're not woke then.
no.
Well, I woke up this morning, if that counts.
Yeah, he's awoke. He's not woke.
I don't know if I have too much of this, I might not be woke for a little.
Then he'll
much
be
longer.
asleep.
You'll have to be woken up.
That's right.
There's a reason I'm mostly quiet on these podcasts.
Well, okay. Let me. I want to finish my point really, really quickly here. I think that's something that is really, for me, been very noticeable about the Conservative government over the last little while, but especially since Mr. O'Toole has taken over, is Conservatives used to be synonymous with that's far right social conservatism. And I think that in times past, that was really the big battle between whether you were going to vote liberal or whether you were going to vote conservative. If you were in the middle of the pack, if you weren't, a card-carrying member of either party already. And I think that, just as somebody who hasn't always been conservative, but is now conservative, I'll say quite freely, the Conservative Party today is believes in equality of opportunity, believes in the right to make your own way in the world, believes in personal freedoms as well as civic freedoms. And for me, again, as somebody who's not always been conservative, it is unbelievable because I don't think I personally have ever had an actual party in Canada that I identify with almost completely, because I've always been that in between guy. And now the Conservative Party for me seems to be like, yeah, give me freedom, give me Like gay marriage, who cares? Go for it.
Right.
Equality of the sexes, go for it. Freedom of religion, go for it.
Yep.
Freedom of association, freedom to run my business, freedom of movement, freedom of property, or like
The world
to own
is your
property.
oyster. Go make something.
Yeah, I
Fiscal
will-
management as well.
I will succeed or fail based on my merits. And it is my responsibility as a citizen of this country to make something of myself. It is not my government's responsibility to take care of me like I'm in adult diapers.
Well,
And that seems like the conservative government right now.
within
is the
reason,
emphasis of
Chris. Like the government's just they do need to give you a safe opportunity, right? And
Sure.
and when I say safe, I mean, oh God, they're cutting off all our heads today. You shouldn't wake up and figure that out. But if they're doing that, and then have, but. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Chris, but I wanted to back up. Okay.
Yeah.
Shannon, what baffles me with what's been going on with all this is that Bill Blair used to be the chief of police in Toronto. he knows wholly what is happening in that city, and it's not us that's the problem. But yet, why do you think that he continues to go down this route and toe the party line when he knows better? He does.
Sean, I don't know the answer to that, but just to say that I am also equally baffled. And in fact, on this exact issue, he has been on record and was before he was elected and also since he was elected, saying, for example, that municipal handgun measures would never work. And now here he is, the chief proponent of this part of C-21, which... this is another thing that should be of concern to all you guys and your listeners. You know that what the federal government has done here is both given municipalities the power to pass legislation regarding the transport and use of handguns in their municipalities, and importantly attached sentences for breach of those conditions involving 2 years imprisonment and also possible license revocation. But here is the tricky part. And also to our point about how this is explicitly targeting law-abiding and only legal firearms owners, the way they're getting around what I think is sure to be jurisdictional challenges from provinces, et cetera, is that they're going to make these municipal bylaws, as you know, a condition on firearms licenses for firearms owners. So clearly, actually, literally, explicitly in the legislation, it is plain as day. That's not going to do a darn thing about the illegally smuggled, illegally imported, illegally trafficked firearms that gangs are using to kill people at exponential levels in Toronto. Not a single thing. In fact, C-21 does nothing about that, but specifically and deliberately targets licensed and legal firearms owners.
Right. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
think even
so
Premier Moa
it's
said
all
that
mind-boggling.
But
I think Premier Moa
Liberal
said already
government,
the handgun ban won't be able to work in Saskatchewan based on their own legislation.
because they've preempted it with their
With a provincial
legislation.
firearm oversight body already. They have a provincial oversight body.
And then let's call a spade here, guys. This isn't just about guns. It's about property rights in general. And
That's why I think
unfortunately, that
every
doesn't
single
exist.
Canadian should be concerned.
absolutely.
Yeah, because of the extraordinary measures that they're bringing forward in
This is
C-21.
just the
Like
start.
I would say to them, today it's firearms owners and tomorrow it's you. Like that sort
Right.
of. So everybody should be seized with this.
Well,
yeah.
the funny thing is, everybody says, well, for some people, that's a bridge too far. And they're like, oh, guns. Well, like, what else are they going to take from me? Well, how about motorcycles? Those are very dangerous. How about motorcycles over a certain CC displacement
Yep.
or
It's
over a
coming.
certain horsepower rating? And then once the motorcycles are gone, how about trucks? How about cars over a certain horsepower rating?
Combustion engines in general.
Well, and then we get onto the topic of, you realize that he's committed to getting rid of combustion engines by 2035.
Yeah.
Like, so that it's not even theoretical. He's already announced it, right?
Yet, Shane says here, Evraz Steel in Regina, right in the heart of Warren's riding.
Yeah, I hear you, Shane.
Yeah, Shane says Evraz is in limbo and will be a bad blow to Saskatchewan's economy if Evraz packs up and leaves. They employ thousands of people.
Yep.
Yeah, Shane, I've been on this since late last year, talking with the ministers about what's happening at Evraz. They laid off 600 people around Christmas time, and they said, well, this is a liberal line too and a left line. Well, they can make something else. They
Sure.
put millions
Learn
of
the
dollars
code.
into Evraz to build pipe. Like they build pipe and they build steel and steel slabs. They have a tubing division and a steel division. So one of their divisions was laid off, and that was the tubing division that builds pipes. So what the left doesn't understand is this is what they're built to do, and we're working to make sure Evraz can employ people. In Regina, it's such an important industry because for every one job that creates at Evraz, there's 4 spin-off jobs at restaurants and other small businesses that work with Evraz. So apparently and unfortunately, the Prime Minister Trudeau, and I remember saying this, he's going to phase out the energy sector, the oil sands, and like this might be the only promise he attempts to keep in this term of government. So we're trying to talk every day to Seamus O'Regan, who's the Minister of Natural Resources, and even when we are building a pipeline now, one of the pipelines they're using steel coming out of country steel to build one of the pipelines, the TC pipeline in Alberta.
Fantastic.
And it's we're trying to talk with our Alberta colleagues to make sure we can get some work done on that, but we really do need to realize Canada, this is what I want to tell everyone, Canada has the most environmentally stringent standards of resource development in the world. Out of the top producing countries of oil, Canada is ranked the most environmentally friendly. I say that the last drop of oil drilled and pumped on Earth should be done in Canada because we do it cleaner than any other country. We should develop the last drop of oil on Earth when that time comes.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Sorry, that was my rant, boys.
Well, and you are fighting on that every day, Warren, and we as a party are going to bat every day on those issues too. But these two things are related too, because they like the way I read it gets back to this point about how the Liberals are, they're appealing to certain people in certain regions who have certain perspectives and certain experiences, and they're trying to spin to them that they're taking action on whatever it is. On this case, it's both, they're trying to say the environment, and also they're trying to say public safety. But in fact, all they're doing in either case is attacking on energy, the best in class, which is Canada, without a doubt, Canada's industry, Canada's track record, especially with regard to every other oil and gas producing jurisdiction on planet Earth. And then on this case with C21, trying to argue that they're passing legislation that's going to make Canadians, their families, their streets, their communities safer, which all of us want. And that's a sham. And all they're actually doing is targeting, attacking already legal and law-abiding Canadian citizens with sweeping, unprecedented powers and violations that have never been done before.
Exactly.
Doesn't it show us all?
Sorry, I guess one more thing about Evraz Steel. 95%
Warren, is this what they call a homer? I love it.
Recycled steel.
Yeah.
It's picked up around Western Canada, recycled and made into useful pipeline. Because it would be lining fields in the back 40 where we all know there's harrows and no diamond tying harrows lying back there, and that's what they use to make pipes. So the
hundreds of trucks traveling down the highway every day to Evraz with scrap steel, recycling all that stuff.
Absolutely. Sorry, Rooster, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, doesn't it show everybody how out of touch the current Canadian government is with Canada outside of Ottawa, Toronto, and Quebec? Like, does that not speak to everyone outside of those regions?
I think it should, and for me, I think it's my job.
And I think in general, it.
Oh, there must be a delay. That's okay.
Sorry, Warren, I think we're overlapping because of my bad rural internet service.
And we need better rural broadband too.
That's right.
You're
we really do.
That's what Jagmeet will bring to you.
Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, good grief. Now I think thinking about Jagmeet bringing rural broadband just totally threw me off my train of thought.
Sorry.
Maybe he'll do another TikTok if we do that. Who knows?
Oh,
Well, let's be honest. It's not going to be Jagmeet that brings rural broadband. It's going to be Elon Musk.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Oh, you mean the private sector and an individual?
Really?
The private sector can do things better than government. I never heard. Blow my hair back. But to that point, this is the thing to know without a shadow of a doubt, and this is the thing to me that should concern all Canadians, regardless of, your partisanship or the way you voted before or whatever. To your point, Rooster, this is the issue. The Liberals absolutely take positions, make policies, and pass legislation based on their target voting analysis, based on politics, based on,
And
you know, the
nothing
voter
more.
coalition. They need to maintain power. It's about
Yeah.
power. It's never about the actual principle, the actual facts, despite all the rhetoric about the evidence, the facts, the science. It's very usual, you know, very consistent that actually they can't call on any of that to justify what they're doing. So, you know, I would like, my perspective is it's total affirmation that that's how they govern.
Complete.
And then, yeah, I think the outcome of
Yep.
it is usually it has no consideration of people in rural areas or regions other than
This
one
is
that
where,
you named.
back to where I said originally, this is what Canadians want. It just drives me insane every time I hear that. This is what Canadians want. Horse shit. What Canadians have you asked?
Well, it's the Canadians that they care about. I mean,
Right.
let's
That's
all go
exactly
back
right.
to the old quote of Justin Trudeau before he had entered politics, talking about how Montrealers are better than the rest of Canada,
Quebecers
Yeah.
are better, yeah.
or Quebecers are better. Yeah.
Yep,
You know what I
clearly.
think? What they're trying to do to everyone is, I think they're trying to convince Canadians that hunting and trapping and that way of life is dead, and I think it's a false
Barbaric.
narrative. And
Yeah.
they're forgetting that. Let's go back to Gil's comment. $13.2 billion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
0.6% of our economy is based on hunting, trapping, fishing, and what Canadians do. And I think it's a direct slap in the face to all those Canadians that continue, and like Chris, like you're a small business owner, all those Canadians that continue to rely on hunting, trapping, fishing, small business owners that provide them the goods for their way of life, they is completely overshadowing. And like you said,
Yep.
he's trying to make Canada and the vision of him. Well, Canadians, that's not what they want. And Rooster, I agree. He's trying to sell a false narrative. That's why we have to come together, stand up, and say, you know what? Like, your vision of Canada isn't what we think our Canada is. You're taking us down the wrong track.
Yep.
We still believe in traditional values. We still believe hunting and trapping. We still believe in oil and gas. We believe in agriculture, because I believe their next attack is going to be on agriculture. It
Damn
started
straight.
already with the
Yep.
clean fuel standard, with the carbon tax, and I think it's time that they're trying to do the same thing to agriculture, what they've spent the last 5 years doing
Without
to
a
the
doubt.
oil and gas
Well,
sector.
they've already started with that, Warren.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They've gone through and essentially hampered the canola market by
sure.
alienating, you know, and I shouldn't, you know, give them props, but they do buy a lot of stuff from us, which is China. They do. The canola market went tits up essentially, and the amount of acres planted this last 2 years was minimal. That's why it's trading for $16.50 a bushel right now.
That's right.
And I work in agriculture, so I can I can say that. But you know, back to the point, like what makes, like, what's going to be that galvanizing moment that brings everyone together? You know, we
Damn
need.
you, Sean. I was going to ask that.
Yeah, like what do we need to bring, you know, these woke liberals on the left, and the hardcore conservatives on the right? What's going to be that middle ground? Like, what do you guys propose to, like, say you get a majority, which, God, I'm hoping, knock on wood, that's, you know, what's going to be that galvanizing moment to bring everyone together and make us whole again?
Well, I really hope that you guys could answer that question to a degree, because the first step is that we have to win the election. And you know, Chris's comments are very interesting to me about his evolution of a voter, because for those of us who are conservatives on the call, I think, I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like, I mean, I don't know, I think it was about 3/4 of the way through 2015 that I thought, okay, this is enough already. Like, everybody's, this guy's off, and like, this is
Clown.
taking the country in a direction that's not going to work in the long term, and is irresponsible and reckless on just about every measure, and is fundamentally attempting to change the way our country is, and constantly and consistently targeting everyday Canadians, completely out of touch with their real lives, and doing the opposite of what he says. Like, so I think it was about, I don't know, probably 2016, newly elected, that I thought, well, I mean, we're not all going to put up with this forever. So I don't really, I mean, the first step is that conservatives really need to win the next election, and I hope you guys will tell us what it is. But I
have a
hope
suggestion.
that it is around a realization around this freedom issue.
Well,
Right.
I think that hopefully, I really do hope that gets some traction. I think that again, as somebody who's had a foot in both worlds, let's say, I think that what the conservative leadership is like. Very day one, Aaron O'Toole wins the leadership. Day one, he starts talking about how he wants to represent all Canadians. I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you go to bed with. I don't care what he didn't say it that way, obviously. I don't care what your religion is, like all Canadians. And I think that this move, because let's face it, the right historically has not been a very inclusive group. Mm-hmm. I think that this move in the Conservative Party to be more inclusive, like, I don't care who you like to screw. I don't care what you like to shoot as long as it's not other people. I don't care, what religion you want to follow. So if you want to be a part of Canada, come be a part of Canada. And I think that we can, as gun owners, can do ourselves a favor by really thinking about whether we want to embrace the adage that I support, like this phrase, I support the right for gay people to protect their pot plants with AR-15s. You know what I mean?
How about using "we're all in this together"?
No, you can't use that anymore. Country. No, they ruined that because we're not all
I know
in this
they
together.
did. I know they did. But how about finding a useful?
I think
for it.
So for us as conservatives, I believe we're the party of freedom of choice when it comes to, basically, like Sean said, of everything. Freedom of choice of where you work, what you do.
Yeah.
And I really think that's important, and we should carry that banner from Diefenbaker on. We have carried that banner.
Yeah.
But what you talk
this
about
is what Canadians really want.
Yeah, and it is. They want to have equality of opportunity, be what you want, work as hard as you can, and just provide for your family so the next generation, and you secure the future for the next generation. That's that's why we're in public life, Shannon and I. But when you talk about galvanizing moments, I thought we almost had one about a year and a half ago when the illegal rail blockades were happening, and some provinces were running out of fuel.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like,
and now
what? What do you mean we're running out of propane and natural gas? Yeah. Where does that come from? And I think it triggered.
Where does that come
from? Right? Like, no, seriously, like people are like thinking, how does that get here? So we're having kind of a similar situation possibly now in Michigan with Line 5 and and oil going up from to the refineries in Sarnia. And if something happens there with that Line 5 and if the Biden administration does something that decides to close the taps,
which is highly likely.
People in Ontario and the East are going to be like, well, what do you mean there's no
better start cutting down trees there, buddy, because
coming out of the refineries in Sarnia. And you know who should supply that fuel now in that Sarnia refinery? Oil from Western Canada.
You know about that.
And we can become more energy independent.
And all the fuel to Pearson Airport.
Here.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of people are going to be thinking like, I know those Westerners were really hot under the collar about that Keystone thing, but didn't really impact us. Like, good luck to them or not. Yeah. But maybe the real life ramifications of that is going to remind everybody that we are all one country.
So it could take a decision by the Biden administration that may come or not, but a decision that is harmful might galvanize Canadians together and be like, I think we need to really focus on becoming more energy independent. And that goes to COVID-19. I think taught us one thing is we need to be able to look after ourselves. We need to produce our own PPE. We need to make sure our own food supply chains are solid across the whole economy. We need to make sure we're energy independent, and that if something like this happens again, Canadians can look after Canadians. We always say the world before Canada, Canadians.
That has to go all the way down to the individual. As individuals, we have to start taking more responsibility for ourselves, for our own safety.
But we
have to become more capable people.
We've been conditioned, though, for generations now to rely on others and even more now, rely on government, right?
Kurt, there are certain circumstances where, if somebody is really down and out and They're,
Sure.
everybody needs help from time to time.
Sure.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
And, so let's not discount that fact. But
No,
at the
no,
same
I'm
time,
not.
let's not give them $2,000 a month to enable them to continue their bad habits.
Well, and more to that point, Sean, like I've got a brother who has schizophrenia. And he hasn't been employable forever, and he has no insight into his illness. He doesn't know that he's ill, and our mental health system is like, I can tell you about our mental health system. I've been through it on his behalf. And to your point, Rooster, I don't think that's what you were talking about, but I agree with Sean that is what what we should be doing. If our government is going to get involved in our lives, it should be getting involved in helping the people who can't help themselves. But just like the quarantine or the COVID-19 has quarantined the healthy and the not at risk, our current government wants to tell people who don't need to be told how to live their lives, And quite frankly, while simultaneously absolutely failing the people who need help, like my brother.
Yep.
And people with addictions. I mean, Saskatchewan, the increase in Saskatchewan, not the total number, just the increase over the next highest year of overdose deaths in 2020 was higher than the total number of COVID deaths in Saskatchewan in 2020.
What we're going to learn about after COVID is the cost of mental health.
It's going to be
illness.
disgusting.
It's going to be atrocious. You're right. I think one thing we do have to realize, and I love your point of learning how to look after ourselves again. And I think everyone's so worried about. I have 3 young children: a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And sometimes we got to realize we also have to teach. We don't want to give them so much, but teach some of the things our parents taught us: how to be self-sufficient. Like how many 20-year-olds now? I'm generalizing. Like can change the oil in the car, can actually change a tire. Like I think.
Or go spend a night in the woods.
You're so right. We do have to let people become more self-reliant, and that's something of a narrative that we should really take a hold of as conservatives. So I always thought of being a conservative as your government is like they make the rules of the game, but they don't play the game. Like we make the framework, and citizens live within that framework, and then do their best to succeed. And that's what I envision conservatives and conservative governments doing.
But it all depends on Canadians being active and engaged, right? That's the really key thing. And it's Canadians themselves knowing that they have that power. So if you're not getting organized, you're not getting involved, you're not voting, and really, even to the variety of points you guys have made, I think they all come back to this kind of basic thing that we have to really be pushing our government on what is it you're trying to do here, and is the thing you're showing us or passing or debating actually going to achieve that end? And this is just, and I mean, so that's why we've got to challenge them on their rhetoric, challenge on the gap between what they say and what they do, and also really push for this evidence and data. So even Chris, to your point, on one hand, there's lots of rhetoric from, I would say, especially from left-wing politicians, but from politicians in general and governments about, caring for the vulnerable and having a safety net for people who can't provide for themselves. I think there's broad agreement right across for every single Canadian that the government plays a core responsibility there. But so therefore, it's our obligation to say, okay, and so what is the government you're talking a big game on that, but what are you actually doing to deliver those results? Right. And that's the same on budget stuff. It's the same on C21. It's the same on energy. It's the same on these economic questions. It's the same on values questions. And that's why it's really imperative for Canadians to really get engaged and push their politicians and push their governments on every issue.
How do we achieve that then? Because we hear every goddamn day that this is what Canadians want, and it's not at all the issues that we're concerned about. Any of the things that you just touched on there. How
Honestly,
do we
I think, I got to say this to you, Lauren, you were talking about, and you guys were reading these embarrassing and lovely messages popping up, but here's what I got to say to you. Like, you're doing it. by having this podcast, by engaging your relatives and your friends and your family members and your contacts and people within your spheres of influence, people who will be motivated, say, on this issue of C-21 and all the other attacks on law-abiding firearms owners. And then even by the fact that actually we're not even talking about C-21 anymore,
No.
Right.
you're doing it, right? So I don't know, maybe that seems like a trite or suck-uppy, blow smoke up
I
your
think-
butt kind
well,
of
but-
answer. It's not intended to be. I think this really is, like, what you're doing is part of exactly the thing that everybody needs to do.
I
Well,
think
you guys
people
need
feel
to
alone.
share the hell out of this so we get a bigger audience.
I think
then.
people feel alone. People feel like what we're saying. I think there's so many people agree with it, but they feel alone and they feel isolated, and that's not only just of
Yeah.
COVID, but just for some reason people
In
feel like
general.
it's uncomfortable to talk about politics, and that makes
Well, it's
people in
been
silos.
verboten. It's been
I know,
taboo.
but we need to
Right.
open that conversation. Like,
Well, frankly,
if
especially
you-
for guys.
if you can't have an open conversation
totally
with your
gotta be
friend
careful.
about what you believe in, what you don't believe in politically, then it's ridiculous. We'll talk about almost anything, how much money we make. Well, we just spent $50,000 on something,
Yeah.
but we can't talk about what our values are with our friends and family.
Mm-hmm,
You need to be able to do that, and we need to have these conversations because, believe it or not, I think a lot more people in Canada think like us than think like Justin Trudeau,
I
Bill
do
Monroe,
too,
and Christian
Warren.
Freeland.
I do.
I
fundamentally
completely agree.
believe that.
Yeah.
or
Yes,
wouldn't be
I
in
do
public-
too.
doing public service.
Well,
Because
the
I
pendulum,
need to-
the pendulum swang so far one way. It's gonna come back, and it's gonna. We're gonna find that middle somehow. And
Well,
and
quite frankly, I think Justin Trudeau had so much success so far, not because there's so much of a voter base on the left. I think this is my thought, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this because I've never talked to actual politicians about my thoughts on this. So here we go. I think that that people in the middle are willing to vote further right than they are on fiscal issues, but they are not willing to vote further right than they are on social issues. They will, however, vote further left than they are on social issues. And I think that a large part of his success has not been because there's such a big leftist voter base. It's that up until now, and I think Andrew Scheer's biggest mistake was not answering questions when he was asked about gay marriage, and up until now, the middle voters in Canada have still been seeing the Conservative Party as further right than they are socially.
Very
And
much.
so they voted further left than they were socially. I know I was that guy. I just happened to be a middle right guy instead of a true middle or even middle left guy.
So I think I see it slightly differently, but it's probably because I've always been conservative. So what's interesting here, Chris, is that how you've outlined your view of conservatives as being individual responsibility, individual freedom, government focusing on core responsibilities and priorities, government actually delivering on the things that it says, responsibility to future generations, allowing business owners to, own their businesses, employ other people, keep their jobs without the government trying to shut them down or take so much away from them that they're unable to do that anymore, putting literally government policies, putting businesses out of businesses and people out of work, and then swooping in to be the, I think that's actually what's happening here, swooping in to be the rescuer
savior.
after they
That's
caused
right.
the economic crisis.
Yeah.
So all these things
It's the
actually
shock
are,
doctrine.
yeah, exactly. All these things are what I always thought conservatives always were and stood for. So it's an interesting conversation so I don't really know how to answer what you've posited here because I thought that we've always stood for that. We've always stood for freedom, always stood for free speech and free opinions and belief and expression. But I would say, I think, like, on a practical level, probably part of what's happening is people are just out living their lives, right? Like, they're out living their lives, working at their jobs, running their businesses. They're not thinking about politics on a daily basis. And also, I think, in a way, they're not even they may not even thinking about the fact that government and political decisions and politics literally has an impact on every single aspect of your daily life, like from your garbage getting picked up to the things we're talking about here. And so I think from a practical perspective, that's actually probably what's happening for most people, rather than what is actually what you've outlined here, which is sort of a comprehensive theoretical consideration of
Yeah.
various philosophies on the spectrum, right? And then on top of that, people out in their daily lives, I think, have an impression that politics or politicians are like far away from them or inaccessible, or
Yep.
that this is
Yep.
something that they can't or don't know or can't do themselves. And I think, I mean, even your sort of sweet comment about like, I've never said this to a politician, like as if we're
Yeah.
anybody, like just for the record, like Lauren and I holding these roles are like literally indistinguishable in terms of like status or value or whatever as a human being, as each and every single one of you are. But your point twigged me that I think there's a whole bunch of people out there in their daily lives, and politics and politicians seems far away from them, and they have no idea even how to get involved in the first place, or that they can have an impact. I think that's actually a real systemic failure, and
Well, I think-
part of why our country's in the pickle we are in right now.
I think there's
Because
so much
Canadians have
disconnection.
so much power, and they don't know it, and they have to exercise it and influence it.
I completely agree with
such
that.
a disconnect with so many people in this country, because we've seen it for years that whenever I stand up and say something, it's just ignored anyway. What difference can I make? And there's a sense of
think
frustration and surrender with so many people in this country right now.
For me, that's interesting about what you just said, Shannon, because I have been, politically active as a citizen since I was 18 years old. I've always voted. I've always informed myself as best I can before I voted, and we're talking federally, provincially, municipally. And I have, up until just recently, coincidentally with Brad Redekop, my MP, he's the first politician ever to actually engage in my personal experience. And prior to him, we had an NDP MP, and I tried to communicate with that person multiple times when C-71 was first tabled. And I got one response that was, we're just not going to see eye to eye on this. And that was it.
That's the same response, Chris, I got from Aaron Weir.
Exactly.
In our riding war.
And you know what? And it's not even just, federal NDP. I've been trying to talk to my MLA as a business owner about COVID for the last year.
Right.
And it's gotten to the point that I'm openly making comments on her Facebook page and trying to make my point there, not so that she'll listen, but so that other people will listen. Other people will read those comments. You know what I mean? Because it's like talking to a brick wall. Yep. And it's interesting. I think that, it's very obvious. I think anybody who's been listening to this for the last 5 minutes even can tell that you two obviously are open politicians, and you two are obviously excellent representatives for your constituents. Like, other than Sean being a constituent of Warren's, like, none of us are your constituent. You're still here talking to us. Yeah. And I think that, it seemed part. I forgot about that part. It almost seemed like a surprise to you that why would people think that politicians are others or inaccessible? And the reality is that so many of your contemporaries make themselves inaccessible.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why
and
Aaron
you're
Weir
exceptional.
and Sherry Benson aren't here anymore.
That's right.
Well, thank you for naming her.
This is a good thing to remember, though. This is
I think another problem we have as a conservative politicians and conservative groups is we don't proxies like the left does. We don't have the radical groups that come together and they protest everything, and that's their job. Like they'll protest a pipeline, they'll protest a new store, they'll protest this, they'll protest. Like, there are so many proxy groups on the left, and you know what the conservative voters are doing? They're trying to make their business run, like Chris. They're going like there's a different mindset to our supporters, and I understand that. I understand that they get more in their day-to-day lives, that there's more that they have to get done, and they have a focus. But these groups out there, that it is people are paying them to formulate a left-wing narrative and drive that narrative down everyone's in everyone's Facebook feed and everyone's Twitter, TikToks, Instagram, everything, right? So they have these proxies that go out and pound their message every day. So that's what we have to drive through, and that's why Shannon's 100% right. Podcasts like this and groups coming together and saying, you know what that narrative is not right, and it's not what we stand for, and it's not what we believe in, it's not what the direction we want Canada to go in. And the more groups we have like that are willing to step up and come forward and have that fight, like it is a fight. Someone put it to me like this, and in the 90s and in the 80s and 90s, there was a fight in the world about socialism and communism versus the Western capitalist idea and capitalism. And after the Berlin Wall fell, like conservatives like, well, fight's over.
Right.
The war's
That's the end
over.
of it.
We won, and the individual freedoms won, and people are gonna work hard and try and worry about their own life. And the conservatives went home, and the left kept fighting. They never stopped.
Yeah, you're right.
They went to municipal councils, they went into schools, they went into universities, they went into academia, and they continued to drive that message. And the conservatives and the right went on and start businesses and do what we wanted to do and build economies. And that, I think that was part of what has happened over the last 40 years.
And you know what's interesting about that? You say that forever the adage has been, in polite society you don't talk about two things, religion and politics. And it almost seems like everybody's talking
What
about
a rude
religion
little
just fine
person
now.
I've been almost my whole life.
Right. But you know what? Everything's been politicized now. Everything.
Yeah.
But should it not be? Like, is that wrong?
Yes, it is. Well, in terms of I think in terms of politics impacts everything.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It impacts.
Well, and
So maybe
everything
just
we
need to
talk
do
about.
away
So you're
with,
saying
don't
it differently,
talk about religion and
politicizing.
politics.
Yeah.
We just talk about politics. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it more.
But we have to take the narrative back. Like, even in schools, you know what kids wouldn't realize? If there's no energy sector, you don't have an iPhone.
Yes.
You don't
Yeah,
have
exactly.
Or you don't have an iPad. Like, they're made of petrochemicals.
Exactly.
Or heat.
And
You don't have this microphone
This
to
podcast.
to stream to do your whatever.
And talk to people on a basis that they'd say, you don't have this quality of life, you don't have this in your home, you don't have this in your school, you don't have this on your fishing trip or skiing trip. That doesn't exist.
Not to mention the last 2 weeks of minus 52 would have been really.
You don't have a warm home.
I was so hoping that would have done something to the energy guys in the East, but it didn't. It wasn't that galvanizing moment.
They didn't get hit like.
But look at Texas. Look at Texas, right? Texas should be an example of why renewables are a necessary part of our energy grid, but there's always got to be a base load power.
Yeah, and
look
not
at that
renewables,
clean.
but domestically produced and not imported from Saudi Arabia. And
Self-dependent.
There's always going to be a place for us to buy that stuff, but we need to focus on supplementing the guys that are and gals that are working up north in Fort McMurray in Grand Prairie, all those guys that are running pipelines, that are digging holes, trying to get that going, and supporting the West while also a trickle-down effect, creating jobs, creating income, creating better living situations, so that these criminals don't fall under Shannon's file. Right? It's all one big problem.
It is all
and
related.
yeah.
Warren's point too about, you've made it such a good point there. Just you guys in this discussion about people getting involved. I as you probably are gathering, I can't even manage to say hello in 5 minutes, but I'm going to try to touch on Warren's point briefly here. I think it's just a crucial thing that you've said, because in the context of most Canadians out there living their lives, not obsessed with politics on a day-to-day basis, feeling like it's far away and not even necessarily knowing they can have an impact. I think they definitely don't know the level, the degree, the scope, and the scale to which, say when they're scrolling on Facebook to get their news, or they're watching the news if they ever do that anymore, or they're seeing, and they see organizations quoted, and they're even organizations, they can be like concerned so-and-so is about so-and-so about whatever. And I found this definitely before when I was in charge of the natural resources file on this debate around energy and environment. There are well-meaning, well-intentioned, caring Canadians that just simply they care about the environment. They just want to know rules are being followed and
Right.
air, water, land, air and water's clean and land's getting taken care of and habitats being maintained. They just want to know that. But media or in other ways, they will see
Elizabeth
groups
May.
quoted. Yeah, they will see groups quoted that appear to be like grassroots local citizens or organizations speaking about something that's happening in their community, when actually in the background, and this is true, not just me making a claim, it is, as Warren has said, a very orchestrated, usually very big money, extremely active, coordinated, deliberate, wide-ranging, broad undertaking. And here we have the average person out in their lives, working at their jobs or running their businesses, doing whatever. And, some issue, I say of an energy project or whatever, is in the news or going on Facebook, and a person takes 5 minutes to think about that in their life, and they're like, oh yeah, well, the concerned citizens of whatever said this, so that must be right. Government better do something about that. And then they quite reasonably go on with the rest of their life, having no idea that actually it's exactly the kind of thing that Warren just talked about.
Yep.
Well, we almost saw that at our city council, Sean, in Regina.
Yep.
Oh.
Sean could go through this, or...
Well, I can't remember exact details, but a councillor brought forward a motion decreeing, what was that, Warren? It was,
So they wanted to cancel and forfeit all
Right.
advertising and sponsorship dollars.
Oh, for oil and
fossil
gas.
fuel energy.
Yep. Yep.
And they said they want to put it in line with cigarettes, porn, and weed because they aren't allowed to advertise.
And guns.
And that's and guns. And that's
In
what they
Regina?
yeah,
Yep.
and that's what,
Yes.
that's what they wanted to compare fossil.
Right.
Who
Yeah.
moved that?
Okay, go. Well,
A
okay.
city councillor, but
was-
it got blown up, and
Yeah.
the good folks of Regina got engaged. So there is an example. So I bring this up for an example of political engagement.
That's
And when
targeting all their
individuals send
livelihoods.
ironically, some of the councillors actually own an automotive shop, and one was a pipe fitter. We're like, well, dude, you wouldn't have a livelihood without the fossil
Yeah.
This
fuel
is you.
sector. This is you, bud.
Yes, this
But,
is you.
I bring this up because that was an example of engagement, and then the fact that when people saw that, they're like, "We will not take for it." People went to city council, their voices were heard, and then that motion was rescinded. So that's
And
an example
props
of
to them.
political action and
Yes.
individual citizens getting involved. And I just want a shout
Well-
out because some might be watching, and thank you for
Yep.
getting involved because that was a ridiculous motion.
Well,
forward by Regina City Council.
we have to even give credit where credit's due, Warren. Mayor Sandra Masters and some of the councillors did a hell of a job trying to stand up for
Mayor
the
Sandra
people.
Masters, Councilperson Councilman Findura, Lori Briciani, Trina Shaw. I think those were the four that voted against it. It was
Yep.
4-7. But kudos also to the councillors that took a step back, listened to their
Constituents.
residents in their wards, and said, you know what, I didn't quite understand. Everyone makes mistakes in politics, but for them, I didn't quite understand what the motion meant, and take a step back
Yep.
and change your votes.
That's huge.
That takes courage
Totally.
to do so. Kudos to those council people that decided to
Now,
reevaluate the situation and come back on the
Still a
right
stupid
side.
idea in the beginning.
You're right, Rooster. I agree.
So now, how do we make?
Summaries of things?
So now, how do we make Trudeau acknowledge and rescind all the bullshit he's gone through?
It won't
Put us
happen.
through
Him,
since 2014. Yeah.
He is.
He'll go to his
interesting
grave
person.
thinking he did, saying maybe not thinking. He'll go to his grave saying he did the right thing.
Yeah, Chris, he's just going to go to his grave saying we experienced it differently.
That's right. Yeah, Trump had alternative facts.
You know
he
how he
has
said that
different
about a woman
perspectives.
that- yeah.
Alternative experiences.
As,
Because
alternative
he's a
experiences.
feminist, but that's how he responded to the
That's
claim
exactly
of
right.
inappropriate, his own
Well, and
inappropriate
that's
behavior
how
with a woman.
his what's her name just stepped down for jeez.
Well, there's
Governor-
been so many women cabinet
I
ministers
know, right?
who have either
the
been
Governor
kicked out or
General-
stepped down from him.
Oh,
How could you remember?
Julie Payette. got-
Julie Payette.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
exactly what she said as well.
Yeah.
That's Selena Chavez wrote a book about her experience as an MP. She was another female MP that Trudeau didn't really see eye to eye with, and then
Jody
said
Wilson Raybould.
she said as an independent, she just wrote a book, and it's supposed to be quite good about the experience of being an MP for one term.
Ooh, that should be out there widespread.
Okay,
Yeah.
you guys, I might get the hook pretty soon because what I'm immersing myself with 24/7 every day, evening and weekend is to prepare to lead along with my conservative colleagues and carry this fight on C21 for you. But on this issue, here's what I got: a person to grab me a list of the sentences they're going to reduce in C22.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah,
feel like we're all vigorously agreeing here. However, to put a fine point on it, you know how the libs and the left all talk about evidence and proof and all that? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any, and also that you all know this. So keep this in mind. C21, so they do what Warren said, which is defeat our colleague's bill the week before. They bring in C21 telling you that it's going to make all of us safer. And then the day after, they bring in C22. And here's what C22 does. It repeals mandatory minimum penalties for unauthorized possession of a firearm, possession of a prohibited firearm, possession of a prohibited or restricted firearm with ammunition, possession of a weapon obtained by crime, weapons trafficking, possession for the purpose of trafficking, reckless discharge, discharge with intent to wound or endanger, robbery with a firearm, and also, you guys, eliminates offenses that would be ineligible for conditional sentencing. So things that you can't get a conditional sentence if you're an offender here. They're going to allow you to get a conditional sentence if you've been convicted of sexual assault, kidnapping, trafficking in person with material benefit, abduction of a person under 14, motor vehicle theft, and arson for fraudulent purposes. So this is, without a doubt, to make the case so all of you know, and all of your friends know, and all of your contacts know, you're not exaggerating when you say C21 does sweet F all about keeping Canadians safer and about doing anything regarding crime while only targeting already law-abiding, legal Canadians. You're exactly right. You're not exaggerating. And look what they've done on the bill that they put forward the very next day after C21.
What's the justification
That's real.
for all that shit?
Well,
Okay,
here's
so
the
I
justification.
think their justification is going to be some ideological issues around like sentencing and mandatory minimums and things like that. Yeah. But these are actually the things that they are going to they're going to relax potential punishments for criminals that do this stuff. That's reality. That's the whole sham about what they say and what they do.
The real reasoning behind it, Rooster, is this. Meow, 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 meow. That's all it is. There's no real...
You know what? This is the only case I can find for legalizing weed because it might bring my anger level down a bit.
Careful, old man. You're going to have a stroke.
So, Chris, you said meow meow, and I kind of think about this when I hear the changes Shannon just read out. I hear.
It's all part of the same song.
It's all gibberish. Okay, so Shannon, before you go, what can anyone listening? What can they do to help the fight?
Yeah.
Warren, help me, but they could do all the things that you are doing right now. But really, okay, I think this is the key thing, and maybe really one of the issues to focus on is the impact on the entire industry and people who enjoy like airsoft and paintball. I mean, maybe this is one of the key issues to really motivate people on, because it might motivate people who haven't previously been engaged on all the other fights. Like the OIC and C71, and in previous years when we've gone through liberals attacking law-abiding firearms owners instead of taking on criminals. So maybe that's an issue really to focus on to get people involved. Yeah, isn't that person exactly right? But that's, I think, everything that you can do to get Canadians, to get your friends and family members and contacts to know that they can have an impact on what's happening here, that they should, call, email,
write on a bar napkin
if you're allowed. Yeah, write on a bar napkin. All the MPs that really are actually going to vote in favor for this. So they really do pose a threat to your property, to your hobbies, to your jobs, to your businesses, and to everybody you know who enjoys the same thing. And that really is the brass tacks. Yeah. And guess what? There's only one party that's the champion on that, and that is going to the wall to fight on this issue. and it will be Conservatives, because as you probably already know, the Bloc and the NDP have both come out saying, I mean, they're mad that this bill doesn't crack down or
do
go
we have
far
2
enough.
minutes left, Sean, or one?
Yeah, no, but keep going. We're fine.
Yeah.
We can go
We're
longer
good.
if we need.
I
Shannon,
think you guys are going longer. Aren't you going longer with everybody?
Sure.
whatever
sorry.
you say, Shannon.
Okay, yeah, I totally just told you to go longer.
So 100% what Shannon said, get involved. Everyone that feels that this terrible legislation is going to affect all of our law-abiding firearm owners, please get involved. And please don't glaze over with your eyes right now. I want to tell you, contact your MP. Get involved in your local riding association. Even if you don't have a conservative, if you live in anywhere in your riding doesn't have conservative, find who the NEDA president is. Talk to them. Get out. Campaign. If I know times are tough. If you don't have money, knock doors. Sean Heidemann and his boy came out and knocked some doors for me. It helps. Every little thing you can do is awesome on a campaign.
Take a piece of paper like this that I just ripped out of my book. Write on one side what you feel, and write on the other side and sign it, and put that. Try fold it just like this. Okay, slide it in an envelope. Put a stamp on it, and or walk and deliver it to your MP, and they will read this. Okay, so do that. Do that. That'll get you going.
I thought this was going to go in a completely different direction.
But that's the truest way to make changes, and it's not for glory. It's just, if you want to make a change, all the little things help. And I know people sometimes say, what can one person do? You can knock on 50 doors, you can mail
That's very true.
25 envelopes, you can talk to 10 of your friends and neighbors and say, you know what this is going on right now has got to stop. Please support your local Conservative Party of Canada candidate, and then we can make this ridiculous go away. And I'm thinking a campaign's coming this spring and this fall, so you don't got to wait long to go out and support your local candidates.
Well, that's the truth, yeah.
Buy a Conservative Party membership, $10.
Warren, you're way better at these pitches than I am.
I think you both did awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so very much. I'm going to end the show now. If people want to contact you, Miss Stubbs, where can they find you?
Oh, I'm on Facebook. Also, they could email me at shannon.stubbs@parle.gc.ca. And also just Googling me will bring up all my office contact information.
Okay.
I would love if people would reach out with their experiences and their concerns, because here's part of my role with the title that Warren reminded me I didn't say in the beginning of all of this, is I will take the lead and help support our colleagues as we all go to bat on this issue. So eventually this C21 is going to come through the committee on which I'm vice chair, and I will be probably I will be speaking at every stage of the bill, and I'm in charge of that whole job. So anybody who wants to contact me to talk about their personal experiences, their amendment, like suggestions for changes to the bill, obviously we want to repeal, but any input that anybody wants to give to me, consequences for your business, for your livelihood, for your family, please send it to me. And that all will be valuable and will be shared with all of my Conservative colleagues as we go to bat and take on this fight for you.
Awesome. Love it. I don't know if you're seeing the comments here, Shannon, but everybody wants you back. So
you're a rock star, Shannon.
Oh my gosh. Well, all I'm going to do now, though, is keep prepping on all the things I have, but also in the back of my mind, keep thinking of all the things I should have said or the stupid things I said tonight
You know
or
what?
whatever. So I would love to come back if you'd like
Yeah,
me.
if you have anything you wanted to add, by all means, we can do a show any day of the week. We all work for a living, so we're gonna have to do it after the show, or after our working hours. But just let us know, and we'll be more than willing to welcome you guys back. Warren, where can everybody find you?
Similar to Shannon, or Warren.Steinley at parle.gc.ca. Pick up the phone. I return every call. I want to hear from everyone. Like Shannon said, we're going to fight this as much as we can. Shannon, I'm not sure if we have the opportunity to have some witnesses when it comes to Bill C-21 if at committee stage, but if anyone wants to get their personal stories, Chris, I think you'd have a great story to tell as a small business owner. Like, we can put that on the record in committee and talk when the minister's there and say, this is actually who you're affecting with this bill. You're affecting law-abiding firearm owners, and you're not doing anything to prevent guns getting in the hands of criminals across the country. So what you're doing now is failing Canadians once again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we're going to be, I mean, it's kind of some of the things I got to do the next couple of days. We're all like writing our speeches ourselves and preparing to speak to all of this. So, Chris, if you send me, or any of you guys, or anybody you know, send me comments, I'll quote you in the House of Commons. And I'll name you if you want, or I won't name you if you don't want. And I'll say, and I'll literally speak your words in the House of Commons.
Maybe I'll go unnamed.
I am totally naming Rooster in the House of Commons. That is my commitment to you. Is when I speak on Bill C-21, I will get Rooster in the House of Commons.
You want to see a man turn red? Get me jacked up.
They can't see it through that luscious beard, Kirk. Anyway, well, hey, thank you guys for taking time out of your day. This has been phenomenal. I wish we could do it longer. We're gonna have to do it again. Thank you again. That was awesome. So, guys, do you have any closing comments or shout outs or anything, Chris or Rooster?
No, shout out to our guests.
Let's shout out the entire Conservative Party right now, because we've got two great MPs on here tonight. But let's face it, the Conservative Party right now is kind of going they got some superstars right now, from Michelle Rempel to Pierre Poilievre and
these
Glenn
two,
Mott
they're rock stars, man.
There's the
Conservative
to your point, Party,
as business owners, thank goodness for Pierre Poilievre.
No doubt, right? But
Yeah.
I think the Conservative Party right now has some really star MPs and some deep talent in it right now, which, contrasting that with the Liberal Party currently, I mean, they kicked all their people out that had even remotely half a brain.
Well, kidding.
I think that if there's any chance of better days, it is incumbent on us as citizens to vote for Conservatives and to marshal a vote for Conservatives in the next election, which
Shannon Stubbs for Minister of Public Safety.
Oh my goodness.
Love the message. Don't do that again.
Yeah, let's turn my ears.
Okay, big shout out to John Johnston and his band, the Dirt Road Scholars, for the kick-ass music. Thank you to Shannon and her staffer, Juanita, and Warren, and your staffer, Siobhan. They are awesome. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Warren, thanks
Thank you,
for
guys.
hooking me up with all you guys.
You bet.
Thanks,
Shannon. See ya.
Thanks. Thank you.